Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast. I'm Nancy Medoff, author, speaker, and coach.
And I'm Beth Knaus, creative copywriter and the owner of That's a Spade Copywriting Services. We are done being polite and ready to get real about confidence, boundaries, and self-respect, both personally and in the workplace.
Beth and I first met when we collaborated on the best-selling communication handbook for women, Unmute Yourself and Speak Up to Stand Out. Now we are amplifying our message and taking it on the road with Unmute Yourself, the podcast. Warning, there may be, no, who are we kidding, will be some adult content. We have a bullshit button and we're not afraid to use it.
So buckle up, buttercups, because here we go.
Hey girl, hey.
Hey girl, hey.
So big news here at Unmute Yourself, the podcast.
Yes.
We need our audience's help.
Absolutely.
Actually, we call them podsters, so we need our
Podsters.
help. So we started the podcast with Hey Girl, Hey, and we start the podcast with Hey Girl, Hey. We explain it in an episode, which is episode, we'll find it for you in a second. Anyway, in one of our episodes, we demystify the Hey Girl, Hey. So Beth and I greet each other this way, and we have done that since we started collaborating on the book, Unmute Yourself, together. And it's kind of a funny little lighthearted way that we make fun of Hey Girl, Hey. And I have received numerous pieces of feedback. It is episode 9. Numerous pieces of feedback from people that they don't love the Hey Girl, Hey. We've also received feedback that it's fun and we should keep it. So Beth, how are we going to handle this?
Well, I think what we should do is take a vote, right?
Okay.
With this podcast, wherever you're listening to it or on social media, if you see it there, we want to know, keep or ditch.
Keep or ditch, Hey Girl, Hey.
Right. And that means we have to work on something else. And of course, I will come up with something and Nancy and I will toss it back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do that creative magic thing where I pull those kind of statements out of my wherever you want to say.
Yep.
And then we'll, if you think that we should ditch it, we're going to ditch the Hey Girl, Hey. We're going to move on to something that matches the bravado of our topic discussions.
Yeah, that's actually a good, this is a great segue into this week's topic, which is the paralysis of perfection. So as when we first started the podcast, we didn't start it on a whim, but we started it not really knowing what we were doing, not knowing how to do it, not knowing what the outcome would be. And as we've stepped into this new venture, I believe we've gotten a little better at it. Our confidence has increased about what we're talking about. We are more comfortable saying that we're podcast hosts. So as we've stepped into it, we're wondering if it's time to sunset Hey Girl, Hey, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's been fun. It's been a fun romp. But,
a fun run. Yeah.
Right.
And hey, who knows? Maybe the majority of people will want to keep it. So, so on social media, you can email us. You can, wherever you can find us, Nancy Medoff, Medoff, and Beth Knaus, Knaus. We are on all the channels. We are everywhere. So let us know if you like it or not. Keep it or dump it, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Yep. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll find out the truth. And we want the truth. We don't want politeness. Correct?
No. Truth.
We can handle it. We can handle it.
Yeah. So, which is, right. So this illustrates the point of the paralysis of perfection, which is what we're going to talk about today. And that when we started the podcast, it certainly was not perfect, was it?
Oh my gosh. No. And I think I think that's how it goes for everybody, right? I think you have this passion and you're like, how do I get into this? What do we do first? And you don't necessarily we didn't really want to hold off. We wanted to get going and get out there and see how it went. And so, sometimes that means you have to be ready to change things up, like we're talking about now, a little bit further down the line. But I think it was more important that we started to talk about these topics than nitpick about things like that.
Right. And that's the thing is if we had waited until we knew exactly how to do it, what the graphics were going to look like, the software we needed, how we were going to, communicate it, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So we did not wait for it to be perfect, and therefore we were not paralyzed.
Right. And it was definitely a grassroots, day by day adventure. Day by day.
Beth is fired up today. I don't know if any of you can notice that. Maybe she's caffeinated. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the paralysis of perfection. You had a really good perspective, and when we were talking about this, and you didn't believe it was necessarily paralysis. You thought it might be something else.
Right. I think it goes back and forth between paralysis and procrastination, which, have similarities. I know for me, when I have to launch something or publish something, whether it's a blog or a sales page for a service or whatever, I almost feel like I'm doing this little dance around it. And, instead of just jumping in,
right,
I'm doing this little dance and I'm kind of like, oh, but maybe over here I need to do this or I need to tweak that. And it's like, no, just take the plunge, jump off the cliff.
Yep.
It's going to be great, And I think that we hold ourselves back by doing things like that. And I see a lot of people doing it. Like one of the places I see it is when I'm writing website copy for someone. And we're getting down to the end, right? These final edits, and somebody will be like, well, I just saw this other website that I really like. And it's like, okay, too late. It's too late for that. What we're saying is great. We're not going to say the same thing as other people. And this is helping you stand out. And I find that sometimes I just need to nudge people over that finish line because you put so much work in, it seems so concrete that you forget. Like in a year, 2 years, you're going to be changing this copy because you want to grow, you want to get the right people, you're going to expand, and you're going to need your copy is going to need to go with you. So it's like, let's just publish this now, and down the road, you'll make some changes. Everything is constantly changing, right?
Yes. Why do you think? Sorry for my rustling papers. I was looking on the back of my sheet of notes. So it's a limiting behavior, right? You're limiting yourself.
Yes.
You're not achieving either your goals or your potential or everything you could achieve. Because what are we all afraid of?
Right. What are we afraid of? Well, I think the easy answer is we're afraid of failure. But I think in many respects, we can be afraid of success. Right?
Tell me more about that.
So I think that when we're successful and that's moving us forward, then we get into that place of the unknown, like imposter experience.
Bingo! And thank you for not calling it a syndrome.
Yep.
Yes, it's intertwined. Yes. Right.
So yeah. I think that's also, and I think so much of this, right, is being able to stop in the moment, be aware that you have these feelings, and then say, what is triggering this god awful feeling? And how do I remove that, right? How do I change my feelings around these thoughts? How do I, rework my thoughts to deal with the situation?
100%. And we didn't, Podsters, we did not talk about this, but this was in my notes. It all ties back to imposter syndrome. So, there's the fear of being judged. There's the anxiety around being vulnerable. What if I fail? What if it's awful? What if it's a total bomb? And to your point, well, what if it does work? Do I even really belong here? What if everybody figures out that I'm a fraud and I'm not really the authority on this, and I don't really have any business talking to people or charging people or speaking about this or asking this question or whatever the case may be. It all ties back to confidence and your belief that you earned your spot there, right? That
Yes.
the world wants to hear what you have to say, and that's what you need to remember.
Absolutely. And maybe
Yeah,
not the world, but your people.
right.
You know, I kind of feel like if you're fishing for the world, that's a really tough audience to please. But if you know who your people are and you're confident about that, right? And you have clarity around that, then you can be confident that there is an audience that wants to hear you. It may not be the next person's audience. Who cares? Right? Who cares?
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I think about, I did this, this was my issue. I did this, first of all, I've had perfection syndrome with my, oh, did I call it a syndrome? Perfection paralysis
Yeah.
with my website, because it has to be perfect. It's my brand. It has to be perfect. It wasn't perfect. And I changed it 500 times. And the original that I thought was perfect, I ended up blowing up. It's part of the progress. So perfection is the enemy of progress. There's a quote out there that if you wait for it to be perfect, it's never going to happen. So I think about this digital course that I did last year, that it had to be perfect. And because it had to be perfect, it didn't really launch that well. I didn't do a great job with the launch. And now I've done one. It wasn't perfect. So this next one's going to be better. And you just get better and better and better. You just have to start. You have to put something out there, knowing that A, no one cares. B, no one's going to know if it's not your best work. Right? You know, when Beth and I were talking about this topic, she gave the example of if she was to come see me speak, she wouldn't know if I wasn't 100% on my game. She wouldn't know if it wasn't the exact format that I usually follow. But she would find value in it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you paralyze yourself waiting for it to be perfect. And I do it myself, and I think it's a cop-out.
Right. And I also think, particularly when it comes to speaking, that, you might think there's this one paramount moment where you're going to say this unbelievable thing, but the people who are listening have connected to something totally different in what you're talking about, right? Because you can assume and you can guess what will be the pivotal statement for people, but everybody's there looking for something else. And, we just have to remember that we can guess at certain things, but we don't really know what's going to hit somebody in the right spot. And so it's all important that you say, and nothing needs to be, perfected so much, because you don't really know if that's the spot.
Right. Right. And you don't know if who you usually resonate with is going to be there that day or for that project and in that meeting, whatever the case may be. So how do you overcome paralysis of perfection?
So for me, it's very much like one micro step at a time. Like, just because I am jotting down some notes about a blog idea doesn't mean I'm finishing my blog right now, doesn't mean I'm posting it, doesn't mean anyone's reading it yet. All I'm committing to in that moment is getting some notes and ideas together, right? Or getting them out of my head and putting them on paper. So for me, it's just really breaking it down and saying, I'm only taking this one step.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the next step. Should I want to go there? I'm the person who gets to decide, right? I like to give myself a little kind of control and power in the situation. And then I generally can just get past it, right? And then you blow right past that and you're like, what the heck was all that fuss about? I just wasted all this time procrastinating. And I love that I wrote this, right? Because in the end, you feel so triumphant and victorious when you accomplish what the goal was.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes. Yeah, I think for me, similar to you, I just take the first step or the next step, and it's a micro step. It could be like I have these yellow legal pads that I write on because I'm, my father, and I love them. But it could be something as simple as starting a new yellow legal pad. Like, this is the legal pad I'm going to use for this project. I write what the project is on top of it. That is one little step. And then the next day I do the next step. Or I say I'm going to do the next step, but sometimes I get caught in my own perfection paralysis. And I just take one little step. And I agree. I think if you can break it down, and I also watch what I'm saying to myself, like, because I acknowledge it. I'm like, okay, you're not doing this because you want it to be the best, whatever it was in the world. And it's not going to be the best, whatever it was in the world, but it's going to be your best right now. And your best right now is good enough. And then it will get better and better and better, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So that's one way. What else? So what are some more thoughts on?
Well, if you have established, a tribe, which we'll dive more into in an episode in a few weeks, call somebody who's gonna call bullshit on you, who's gonna say, this is a great idea, you should do it, what are you waiting for? And maybe they'll give you a little accountability and say, you have an hour to pick that legal pad and write the title on it, right? And someone who will nudge you and check back with you. I think that's one thing. The next thing, it's a great idea, keeps coming in and out of my head. What is it? Oh God, this happens, right? I'm not procrastinating right now.
Yeah. Well, I can jump in if you need.
Please do. You go next, and then I'll get myself together here.
So Beth brought up accountability, and Beth and I both have accountability partners. And it's interesting because I didn't realize this was a thing until I left the corporate world and started my own business. Because in the corporate world, you have goals and they have to be met. And if they're not met, you get bad performance reviews or you don't get as much of a salary increase. It affects your performance. It also affects your performance in the solo business owner world, but there's no ramifications other than you don't get the project done. So there's this thing out there called an accountability partner. And I have one that I meet with every week, and it's really effective. And if you don't have an accountability partner, I would recommend your family, somebody in your family. Beth mentioned your tribe. I like someone in my family because my family will always call me out on my bullshit. And ideally your tribe should as well, but for me, it's my family. I think that's great. And they will, I'll say I'm working on this project and they'll check in and check in and check in. And I don't want to disappoint them. And I don't want to go back to them and say, well, I haven't done anything on it. So that's one of the tactics I use.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I think it's great that your family is like that, because I think that for some people, that's a little more challenging, that their families might say, oh, honey, that's fantastic. And you're doing such a great job. And not really, they might be afraid to hurt your feelings or discourage you or, push you a little too hard or whatever. So I think that's really great. The idea that I was thinking of is one of those things I rely on quite a bit. And I'm sure I've mentioned it here, is the whole facts and feelings thing, right? Like, yes, you can have these feelings of perfection and, uncertainty and, imposter experience, and you can have all those feelings, and that's fine. Get through it, have a little pity party for your however long it takes. But then the fact is, you want to complete the thing, right? Like, so if I want to write a blog, if I don't get it together, the blog doesn't get written. Fact. So then I have to address that. Yeah, I am feeling a little, tumbly in my belly or whatever, because I'm addressing something, fierce or controversial, but I want to. And so I'm going to try to move forward with the facts.
And that's a great point. So if you keep letting perfection get in the way of achieving this, whatever it is, project, whatever it is, or even asking a question in a meeting, is it really that important? Because if it was that important, you would make it a priority. So you're making it a priority, but then you are giving yourself an excuse to not do it.
Right.
So that's interesting as well. And I do that often in my work is, well, I have blown this off for several weeks, procrastination, saying that it's because of perfection, but really it's probably not. It's probably just procrastinating. And is it really that important? And then you have to decide to either fish or cut bait.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. It's a good one.
agree.
It's a good
Yeah.
one. Yeah. Again, I think that this podcast is a great example.
Yes.
We had no idea what we were doing. The first few episodes are good. I mean, they're good, but the more we do it, the better we get at it, and the
Yes.
better the results. Had we
Right.
not started, we would not be doing it. So the message, I guess, is to just start.
Right. And, I have here in my notes for this discussion about trial and error. Everything is trial and error in the beginning. Everything, right? Even if you could be as prepared and perfectionistic as possible, something is going to go awry, right? There's going to be something you didn't expect or something that happens, and you're going to have to deal with it. And it's okay, because no one is exempt from that, right? No one gets a free pass. And that's how we learn, right? That's what we're learning about the podcast. And you get feedback from people, and that helps shape things and move forward. So you can't move forward, you can't get better if you're not willing to take some risk with trial and error.
Absolutely. Yep. Perfect. I think that's a great ending segue.
I agree.
Can't get better if you're not willing to put yourself out there and at least try.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Give it a go. We support you.
We support you. And thank you for supporting us in the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. You can find Nancy and I both on LinkedIn and Instagram. And of course, we both have websites, and you can send us an email. And I think you can you can probably make comments on Spotify or Apple. Do you think? We should find that out. If that's where you're watching it and you want to send some type of feedback. But so you can follow us personally, but we would love to get some ratings and reviews on Apple if you find what we say positive and helpful to you. If you've listened to a couple episodes and really like it, and feel free to share with other people that would value what we have to say.
Yes. And podcast ideas, things you want to hear more about. I think I mentioned this in one of the previous podcasts. We love some topics, and we find they don't resonate with our audience as much as topics that we're kind of lukewarm on, and they're a huge hit. So let us know what else you want to hear about. We do the research, we formulate our thoughts, we start the dialogue, and hopefully, as you all are walking or driving or listening or at the gym or wherever you are, we are offering a little bit of perspective. So thank you to our podsters.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
I think that's a bye, girl, bye.
That's a wrap. Bye, girl, bye.
Bye, girl, bye. Don't forget to vote for Hey Girl, Hey. Bye.
That's right. Bye.
That's a wrap on another episode of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. We hope you found value in today's podcast. We hope you were able to take a little time for yourself and perhaps think about how you're showing up.
And thank you for all of the great feedback we've been receiving. We'd love to hear more from you about what you think, the tactics you're using every day to speak up, and anything else you'd like to hear about on future episodes of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. You can contact us through our websites. Nancy can be found at nancymedoff.com, and Beth can be found at that'saspade.com. Or you can email us at unmuteyourselfthepodcast, all one word, @gmail.com.
We will see you next week, and until then, keep speaking up.